So how much is an idea really worth? It's a huge question, right? For decades, economists and policymakers have struggled to figure out the true value of innovation. But what if I told you there's a secret signal hidden in plain sight that's been telling us the answer all along? It turns out the secret isn't in the idea itself, but in its price tag.
Okay, to really get to the heart of this, let's just ask a simple question. Is a patent for, say, a new kind of pencil worth the same as a patent for a groundbreaking new cancer drug? I mean, of course not. That's obvious. But for a very long time, the way we measured innovation basically suggested they were.
See, the traditional method was super simple. You just count the number of patents filed. The country or the company with more patents was seen as more innovative. But there's a huge, huge problem with that. It treats every single idea as if it has the exact same value. It's kind of like counting all the instruments in an orchestra without knowing which one is the lead violin and which one is the triangle.
So how do we actually find that lead violin in the orchestra of ideas? Well, it turns out some clever economists found a clue not in the patent application itself, but in what happens after it's granted.
And here's the key insight, the big aha moment. Getting a patent isn't a one-time thing. It's more like a living document. To keep that legal protection going, inventors have to prove they still believe in its value. And they do that with their wallets. They have to put their money where their mouth is, literally.
I absolutely love this analogy. A patent isn't some trophy you buy and own forever. It's much more like a subscription. And, just like your Netflix subscription, eventually a bill comes due, and you have to ask yourself, is this still worth paying for?
And that bill? Well, it's called a patent renewal fee. It's a fee you have to pay every few years to keep your patent from expiring. And this thing that sounds kind of boring, this little administrative fee, it's actually the secret key to the whole puzzle.
Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, it all boils down to a really simple decision that, it turns out, reveals more than you could ever imagine.
So how does this work? I mean, how can a simple fee tell us whether we're looking at the next blockbuster drug or just a slightly better paperclip?
The beauty of this whole thing is the super simple economic logic behind it. When that renewal bill shows up, the patent holder has to make a pretty cold, hard calculation. Okay, is the future profit I expect from this idea going to be more than this fee? If the answer is yes, they pay up. If it's no, they let the patent lapse, and that idea is released into the wild for anyone to use.
Now, one of these decisions by itself, it's just a whisper. But when you add up millions of these choices from every industry, from every country, year after year, well, all those whispers, they become a roar. It creates this massive global signal that tells us exactly how valuable innovators themselves think their ideas are.
And wow, when you look at the data, it tells a pretty brutal story. It's really survival of the fittest. Just look at this steep drop-off. After only 5 years, more than a third of these patents are basically in the graveyard, abandoned. By year 10, 2/3 are gone. And after 15 years, only a tiny 10% are still considered valuable enough to keep paying for. It turns out, most ideas just don't have lasting commercial value.
Okay, so we have this massive treasure trove of data. What have economists actually learned from digging through it all? Let's take a look at some of the key findings from an analysis of patents in Finland and Norway.
Well, first off, it's crystal clear that not all industries are created equal. There's a definite pecking order. The top tier is completely dominated by patents in drugs, medicines, and chemicals. And, that makes total sense, right? A single successful drug patent can be worth billions. The value drops as you move into machinery and electronics, and it's lowest in sectors like textiles and construction.
Okay, now this next part is really fascinating. At first glance, it looked like patents from certain countries were just, better, more valuable. But when they dug into the data, they realized, hang on, that's not quite right. The difference is mostly just because different countries specialize in different industries. Once you account for that, the whole nationality effect pretty much vanishes. With one crucial exception, patents filed by people in their own home country tend to be less valuable. And the thinking here is, why? Well, it's probably because it's just cheaper and easier to file locally, which encourages people to patent more speculative, long-shot ideas.
All right, here's another great puzzle this data helped us solve. Back in the late 60s and 70s, economists noticed something kind of worrying. The number of patent applications in a lot of developed countries was falling off a cliff.
Now, if you were just counting patents, the conclusion was pretty scary. It looked like innovation was stagnating. But was it really?
But the renewal data told a completely different story. Yes, the quantity of patents went down, but the average quality, the average value of each of those patents actually went up.
It wasn't a decline in innovation at all. It was a shift. Companies were focusing their resources on fewer but much more valuable ideas. This is a classic quality over quantity trade-off, and it's something you would never see just by counting patents.
So, okay, let's bring this all home. What's the big takeaway here? Why does this secret signal even matter?
Well, it gives us a much sharper lens to view innovation. For policymakers, it's a huge deal. It means they can design patent systems that actually encourage truly valuable inventions, not just mountains of paperwork. For economists, it's a far more accurate way to measure real technological progress. And for businesses, it's like a treasure map, showing them where the most durable value is actually being created across different sectors.
So, at the end of the day, it's amazing to think that by tracking this one simple choice, to pay a fee, repeated millions of times over, we can turn millions of quiet individual decisions into one clear, powerful story about the true value of innovation.
And that leaves us with one last big, forward-looking question. Now that we have this amazing tool to better understand the value of yesterday's ideas, the real challenge becomes, how do we use that knowledge to create policies and incentives that will spark the truly world-changing inventions of tomorrow?